In this video, I'm going to go through some common divisibility tests. So I'm going to think about the number 1386 and ask if it's divisible by 2. So the divisibility test for 2 is to look at the last digit, and if it's even, the number is divisible by 2, and if it's not even, the number is not divisible by 2. So 6 is an even number, so 1386 is divisible by 2. And we can check if we do that division, we need to check that we're going to get a whole number, and in this case it comes to 693, so it checks out. Divisibility rule for 3 is to add the digits and then to check whether the sum of the digits is divisible by 3, and 18 is divisible by 3, so therefore 1386 is divisible by 3. And we can check by doing that division and seeing if we get a whole number, and sure enough we do. Divisibility rule for 4 is to look at the last 2 digits, and if the last 2 digits are divisible by 4, then the number itself is divisible by 4. And in this case, 86 is not divisible by 4, and so therefore 1386 is also not divisible by 4. Divisibility rule for 5 is to look at the last digit, and if it's a 0 or a 5, then the number itself is divisible by 5, and in this case the last digit is a 6, and so we know 1386 is not divisible by 5, sorry. Okay, coming on to 6, if the number is divisible by 2 and the number is divisible by 3, then the number itself is divisible by 6, and in this case we already determined that it was divisible by 2 and by 3, and so therefore it must also be divisible by 6. So let's just check that. So 1386 divided by 6 comes to 231. And that's a whole number, and so we've checked that the number is divisible by 6. 7, we're not going to go over 7. That's a little beyond the scope of this level of mathematics. There are divisibility rules for 7, but they're pretty complicated. So we'll skip to 8, and divisibility rule for 8. One divisibility rule is there's a few of them, but I think probably the most straightforward one is to look at the last 3 digits and to ask if the last 3 digits are divisible by 8. And in this case 386 is not divisible by 8, and so the number itself is also not divisible by 8. And for 9, kind of like the divisibility rule for 3, add up the digits, only this time you ask yourself, is the sum of the digits divisible by 9? And if it is, then the whole number itself is divisible by 9. And 18 is divisible by 9, and so 1386 is also divisible by 9. Let's check. So it comes to 154, which is a whole number, so sure enough the number is divisible by 9. And let's just finish off with 10. The divisibility rule for 10 is pretty straightforward. The last digit has to be a 0, and it's not in this case, so the number is not divisible by 10.